Last month I attended CCC 19, the Climate Change and Consciousness Conference up at Findhorn. I got to hang out with Jonathan Porritt, who's been one of my heroes for a long time. This is what he had to say. Here we are in our next episode of Tesla Talks. I've got the wonderful Jonathan Porritt with me up at the Climate Change and Consciousness Conference up at Findhorn, where Jonathan is a keynote speaker on tomorrow's calendar and schedule. What are you going to be talking about tomorrow, Jonathan?
My title is Hope in the Time of Apocalypse.
Wow.
Do you think that should meet the demands?
Well, yeah. I mean, what is that? What is hope in the time of the apocalypse?
It's just so extraordinary being here because people are confronting now the reality of what the climate science is telling us. So they're not backing away from it. It's not good news. It keeps on getting slightly worse. And for a lot of people, they've already come to the conclusion that maybe it's too late to stop all that. I don't subscribe to that view, but nonetheless, I am very aware that there are more and more people who do. So for me, trying to work out what really authentic, action-oriented hope looks like at a time when the debate is going down those tracks, that is really critical for people.
Fantastic. I'm very much looking forward to that because the conference, although it's as brilliant as it's been, there's been a lot of despair.
Yeah.
And science is saying we've only got possibly 10 years to turn things around, and I'm loving hearing you say that there's some optimism at the end of the line.
Yeah, and I think people need that. Although I tend to steer away from the word optimism, which always I find there are too many kind of I call them brittle technomaniacs. They've got all these techie things going for them, and they say, why are you so depressed about the state of the world? Just think about it. And then they'll roll out this incredible list of technologies that's going to make a huge amount of difference. And I call it brittle because there's no real underpinning analysis about how that's going to help make life better for most people around the world. So I prefer talking about hope rather than optimism.
Well, hope is good. So I'm
okay on the hope.
Hope is good. I mean, as you know, this morning we had the young people giving their voice.
Wow, that was quite something.
It was, and I did feel hope actually for the first time through this week.
Yeah. And
we're halfway through the week, aren't we? So if we're beginning to move into the space of hope, and tomorrow you're going to come with some, some actions. That
quite a bit of apocalyptic doom and gloom as well, just to give people a nudge to start with.
But the point is,
this balance. It is this balance because the science is what it is, and there isn't. I'm going to just remind people you can't sort of turn a blind eye to that when you've got the consensus emerging as it emerges now about the speed of the way things change. And you can't just say, whoa, I don't like that. I don't want to hear that. I'm actually not going to plug into that. On the grounds that if I do plug into that, I might get depressed. I might not be able to cope with it psychologically. It'll stop my work, what of nature that might be. And there are some people who literally will not open themselves up to what the science actually tells us, which is pretty extraordinary.
And you would see those as deniers then in that case.
Well, I'm so struck by what the rather amazing Greta Thunberg said in one of her many talks, and she was asked explicitly about this issue to do with why people don't want to hear the truth. Because her starting point is, as we saw in the Extinction Rebellion, is tell the truth. Just tell it as it is. And what she said, and it was such a powerful moment, she simply said, look, this is the way it looks at the moment to us, to young people today, is that today's climate delayers are the new climate deniers.
Right, okay.
And I can really see the logic behind that because we have had, decades of people denying the phenomenon. You can't do that any longer, not if you want to have any residual credibility. Where are we going?
Well, I just pulled down a dead end. This seems to be quite a theme when I'm doing these Tesla talks. I had Oliver Heath in the car with me a couple of weeks ago, and I ended up down a dead end. Okay. Maybe it's a sign of
it's
our
something about our sort of spirit going in the wrong direction here, Jarvis.
Well, we were talking about denial at the time, so there we are.
But it's so interesting because if denial has gone as a kind of response from politicians and everybody else, you've still got delay. And that's now, knowing what we know about the time available to us, that is pretty worrying too. So
it is, and what I'm drawn to think about at the moment, particularly over the last week or so, you mentioned Extinction Rebellion, you mentioned Greta. You know, there is something happening right now.
There is.
People are responding, and why do you feel? Why is it happening now? Is it been Greta that stimulated that, or is there something else going on that is catching the consciousness of the mainstream finally?
I think that there are just so many different elements of this. It is, for instance, just step back from the UK and think about the situation in the US, where, to my knowledge, they don't yet have an Extinction Rebellion. They might have quite soon.
Yeah.
But in the US, despite decades of kind of Fox News-driven propaganda, anti-environmental rhetoric from Trump downwards, a very significant majority of people in the USA now acknowledge that climate change is happening, and more astonishingly, acknowledge that it is driven by our human economy.
Yes.
By our use of fossil fuels, by the emission of greenhouse gases, by this whole story of industrialization and so on. Now, that's remarkable. It's sort of astonishing they've come to that conclusion.
Yes.
And the reason for it
Yes.
is the number of people whose lives have been directly impacted, often devastated, by climate shocks of one kind or another. Hurricanes or storm surges or flooding or wildfires in California. And if you actually tot it up, percentage of US citizens who have either been directly affected or have friends, family, work colleagues who've been affected by it, it's an astonishing percentage of the total US population.
Right.
And that then feeds into a very different kind of discussion, because you can't sort of say, well, okay, that's a shame about those wildfires, but they've obviously got nothing to do with climate change. You have to be open to the fact that they are happening because of climate change.
Yeah. Well, even as we speak now, today, this orange cloud to our right here, which I will show people because I'll do a video of it, that was a wildfire that happened yesterday. 40 miles away. There is fires live now.
Oh my God.
So this cloud here is literally the very, very cause of climate change blowing over Finland as we speak. The gardener told me this morning.
Really?
She shared it with me this morning,
And what caused the fire? Just everything very dry and there hasn't been much rain?
Yeah, arid and dry and very, very hot.
And just to remind us where we are, we're still in the middle of April.
We are indeed.
It's a pretty weird time to be having a wildfire.
Up in Scotland.
In Scotland.
Of all places,
Yeah.
So
I think there's a broad shift in consciousness in many parts of the world. That means fewer people are writing the kind of idiotic, denial-based stuff they were writing about. And bit by bit, people are coming to the conclusion, okay, it is happening. We're in the frame for this. There's a lot we can do, and let's get on with it. And of course, for us here in Findorn, we need to be focusing now on the lot we can do.
Yes. No, good. I mean, you have been one of my heroes. I can honestly say, genuinely, I followed your.
I'm just checking. He's got a straight face when he's saying this. Okay.
Well, as you know, I've only been in this for 10 years, so I'm not even a teenager yet. And you've been shouting from the rooftops about these issues for nearly 40 years. More than 40 years.
45 years.
I didn't realise you were that old.
Thank you so much.
I've got a question really about your work, because I know that you've worked politically, you've worked for charities, you've worked in big business. Now we're doing kind of very much connected with people, just from all walks of life. What's been the most significant area for change, or what do you feel is the most significant area for change? Does it have to come through the politicians? Does it have to come through big business?
I've gone back and forth on this, and when we set up Forum for the Future in 1996, I was absolutely convinced that business would step into this space, would understand that their future prosperity was jeopardized as a consequence of us continuing to trash the planet and so on and so forth. 25 years on from that, because nearly 25 years, it still worries me that business has moved forward a lot, is doing a lot. There are real changed outcomes as a consequence of business getting involved. But that's all proportional against what really needs to be happening in a very different way, and they're still way off the pace. And frankly, what I've relearnt, and I suppose I knew this, is that businesses can only operate within the envelope of the law that is set by governments.
Right. Yeah.
You know, governments determine how capital markets work. Governments determine incentives in a market-based economy. It's governments that could mandate all the things we're finding incredibly difficult to do. I mean, take energy-efficient housing. This drives me completely insane. We've got lots of worried, conscientious people who'd like to be doing more to make their houses more efficient.
Yes.
Or to build new, efficient houses. This government swept away all the regulation about energy-efficient housing between 2010 and 2015. The whole lot just went.
Yeah.
So for anybody now who is anxious to deal with issues of fuel poverty, for instance, with millions of people in this country having very poor quality housing,
yes,
and having significant impacts on their health as a consequence of that, you kind of think if we'd had a 20-year program of actually renovating their homes to the highest energy efficiency standards, sure, we would have done a lot for our carbon targets. But just as, and from the point of view of people, more importantly, it would have made a massive difference to their quality of life.
Yeah.
Massive difference.
And have a bit more money to play with as well in other areas, wouldn't they?
Exactly.
Because energy's
Exactly.
So
you come back to this, and then you have to say, so government really is still in the frame here. If they don't provide the right signals, the right quality of leadership, consistency over time, then business will do what it is asked to do, plus a bit more, because that's the way it goes today. Most businesses are operating way beyond the legislated minimum these days. But they still can't move as fast as they need to.
It's an absolutely saddening state of affairs. How are we? What are we going to do then?
I am actually still pretty hopeful that there is a point at which this growing sense of ill-ease and anger comes together to force a series of changes in our political establishment. And that's why I am so supportive of Extinction Rebellion and have been keen to make their case, to advocate for them ever since they started. I think the school strikes are utterly fascinating and could be a real game changer. Politicians are pathetic when they're sort of confronted by young people. They suddenly lose all that brash certainty that they have when they're confronting adults. And just watching members of the European Parliament eyeballed by Greta Thunberg and having literally nothing to say in their defence.
Just embarrassed.
They're all over the place. So I think I am genuinely very excited by that. And I think there is a way in which that's going to grow and grow. This particular expression of Extinction Rebellion might not last. It might die away, but then there'll be another expression, and we'll see it coming faster and faster.
You're right, isn't it? It's showing leadership. It's showing transformational leadership. It's showing that there are now models where people can take their power back.
Absolutely.
I mean, we've been harping on about this in our very small network for My Green Pod, saying, the consumer, where you put your money is actually what you're kind of calling. So,
and that if people interpreted that in the round, because one of the things that bugs me still, and I know you have been dealing with this, is the whole question about where they put their pensions.
Yes.
This is a nightmare that we've still only got a tiny percentage of people who have chosen to make a judgment about where their pension money goes. Everybody has to have a pension now. Everybody can find a way of dealing with this. I'm not saying it's as easy for some as it is for others. But when they discover that their own pension investment is going into oil and gas companies, into chemical companies, into mining companies, often still into tobacco, into arms, you just think that people, if they really knew that their future well-being in terms of the pension they'll get in due course is only being secured by virtue of investing in the companies that are destroying their prospects for the long term, I think people would be utterly outraged. But the system is geared to silence.
Well, that's the point, isn't it? It's the information's not readily available.
Exactly.
That's what we've tried to do, is make this information available. available. I mean, was it just the other day the Norwegian fund, which is one of the largest investment funds in the world?
I thought this was rich, I must say. You got to laugh, given that 100% of their there are two funds. One is the oil fund,
yes,
which is where they top slice all their revenues coming from their oil and gas assets, and the other is the contribution that Norwegian citizens make to their future pensions.
Yeah.
But I kind of loved it when they just said, "Okay, that's it. It's time to quit the oil and gas scene now. We're going to be gradually." They didn't use the word divest, of course.
Well, I heard the word divest.
Not from the spokespeople in the fund.
But certainly I think it was on a radio.
Yeah, no, people have been. They may not have used the word. We're all using the word like crazy.
So we're all hopeful.
Exactly.
But it's not the truth.
Well, no, it amounts to the same thing. But the language here is really critical because the divest invest movement. So get your money out of the bad stuff and put your money into the good stuff.
Yes.
Has huge symbolic and real power.
Yes.
And that means the word divest has this kind of. Okay, that's really important. So, sign of a time.
Yes, no, it is. It is. So, what are your take homes going to be for those people that are not going to be able to tune into the conference? What are your take homes? Are you willing to share? If I promise not to put this out before tomorrow.
Well, there was a very interesting moment in the session today where one of the young people who were just amazingly inspirational and articulate, oh my God, but one of them said, okay, so I want to just now go to the quick here and I want to ask all of you old adults, how many of you are prepared to get yourself arrested in order to
specific
show
for
us
over 60s, wasn't
specific for over 60s.
I was quite pleased about that because I would have stood up, but I didn't quite fall into that category.
And it made me think. I mean, I'm obviously always balanced the campaigning side of my life with the kind of advocacy work that I do with business and government and so on. And thank heavens I've been able to do that because it's made an enormous difference. But for me now, I'm gradually winding down my involvement through Forum for the Future with business, and I don't have anything to do advising governments any longer. So I want to get more into the campaign side of it again.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Wow, which is where you started.
Which is where I started. Yeah. Absolutely.
Full circle.
Yeah.
Wow.
I know, and I'm excited about this in a way. I just know for me it's the right moment to do that. I'm already quite involved in a lot of campaigning stuff anyway.
Yes.
I've got a continuing interest in anti-nuclear campaigning, and I'm still very actively involved in CND and stuff like that. So all those campaigning things have been part of my life for a long time.
Yes.
And the Green Party and electoral reform and all that stuff. So I just want to get that more coherent in my life at the moment. That means doing less of some of the things I'm doing right now. So.
And have you got the beginnings of a shape of that? And you may not want to share too much right now, but the only reason I ask is, am I able to join you? I mean, is this a...
Well, my sense is that I have had the privilege in the last 2 years of working with 3 groups of young people on different campaigns around the referendum in particular, but on different issues. And working with young people has just been electrifying for me. And so I'm going to find a way of bringing whatever experience I've got to help and inform young people as they kind of set out in this world. Because as they said to us this morning, we don't have a choice about this now. You had a choice. You weren't born into a world which we're told is dying. It wasn't like that when you were born. It is. We now, pretty much the first thing we're told when we're waking up to these things is your world is dying, so you're going to have to do something about it, which is a shocking, shocking thing to tell young people.
Yeah, it is.
So if I can bring some of my experience and still passion for the campaigning side of it and work with young people's groups. So I have got in mind one particular way of doing this, but it'll sort of come together.
I think that is. I feel. I mean, my heart is feeling inspired by that because what I can see within my own life, and I'm not a young person anymore, but I'm not old either. I'm kind of in the middle. I've never really had the experience of seeing campaigns in their full momentum.
Yeah.
I mean, my parents obviously were part of the kind of Love Revolution and the Vietnam, campaigns that were going anti-Vietnam, anti-war. But we've not really had any real experiences of that, have we? So your wisdom combined with the passion and energy of the young people, that's kind of true tribal, intergenerational.
Although if you start calling me an elder, you're in trouble. Okay, seriously. Okay. Mind you, that is slightly preferable to being called a wasting asset, which is just about as rude as you can get.
I didn't say it. Just for the
That's
record.
In my own organisation.
I haven't said that.
I'm the wasting asset in chief.
No, but actually, I'm a grandfather, so I'm actually seen as an elder in some parts of the world.
Right.
Because by the very nature of the way that I'm a parent and a grandfather.
Right.
So I don't take. I don't look badly on the term elder, I suppose. It's in reverence.
No.
But the point is, you've got the wisdom and the experience. Forget about the.
Well, I've certainly got the experience. I went to Extinction Rebellion's office in London 2 weeks ago, and honestly, it was both extraordinarily inspirational and very.
You're going there. Look, that's the army barracks.
You could be in trouble then, mate. They'd be confiscating this whole number immediately. But it was also very funny for me because it reminded me so much of the office that we had at Friends of the Earth in the 1980s.
Yeah.
And whenever we were gearing up for a demo or for a direct action or whatever it was, lots of volunteers would arrive. There'd be this buzz of activity and all sorts of people would be making placards and banners, and they're doing the telephoning to get people to the right place at the right time, etc., etc. And there was a sort of sense of, whoa, I know what that energy feels like.
Yes.
And that is so exciting. And I really take my hat off to how they've organised the actions over the course of the last week. It's been extraordinary.
It has.
Absolutely
It's
so organised and so emblematic of what it means to maintain a peaceful, civilized way of thinking about protest.
Yes.
Very creative, good fun.
Yes.
Every time I went to one of the different sites in London, you sort of think, whoa, everybody's having a party here.
Yeah.
And they were, but
yes.
they were doing a really serious job at the same time. So it's been a brilliant week in that regard.
Yeah, I agree. And that's actually the action that people can take, isn't it? If you're not part of the solution, then you're definitely part of the problem. Even by the very fact of going to work, working for a company that might not have, the longevity in their interests.
Well, I was thinking, because Forum for the Future, we stopped working with big energy companies 8 years ago now, just because we couldn't fathom out what they were doing. But you think now of bright young people who've just taken on a job in Shell or BP or ExxonMobil, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
They're looking at exactly the same data sets that we're all looking at. They presumably have the same ambitions for their own future success, and they'll have their own compassionate concerns about other humans. How can you work now in a company like that, which is still actually intent on making the problem worse, not making the problem better?
Absolutely.
I find that really difficult.
No, so
to deal
do I.
with.
And we're probably looking at, I don't know what the percentage is, probably 90% of the businesses are not operating in our best interests.
Well, that sector is really shocking. I don't have a sense of what the percentage is. I think an awful lot of companies are actually doing as good a thing as they can to provide the goods and services that we need.
Yeah, fair enough.
And it's but they could be doing so much more if we just change the rules of the game. So that is a concern of mine. I want the campaigning to keep that fresh in their mind. And this is a thing at Findhorn. Findhorn doesn't really do politics very well. There's a sense that it's a little bit difficult to handle. There's this strong commitment to a spiritual core, which is really a really critical part of it. But for me, I want that spirituality to have an external focus as well as an internal focus to help drive what it is that we need to do to change things in society. It's a powerful force when you unleash that kind of spiritual commitment into engagement with the outside world and really taking on the sort of forces that need to be confronted, to be honest. Not a good Findhorn word, I admit.
Yeah.
Boy, is it powerful.
Yeah, it is. I'm really pleased you brought the spirituality bit in, because my background was spiritual before I got into business.
Indeed.
And it is an element. It is an aspect of consciousness that we perhaps can evoke into this process.
Well, it's always been very important for me personally.
Yeah, and my thing is that if we are doing that, then we're working in unity or in co-creation with the planet and each other, and so that's what I love about the spiritual kind of aspect of it. Well, Jonathan, that has been an absolute delight. We are now back at where we started.
Yeah, I know. I'm very impressed we managed to get our way back here. I was pretty horrified at the yellow cloud, fire cloud.
Yeah,
that was pretty extraordinary.
Yeah,
I like your Tesla. Have I got that in just in time?
Well, you have indeed. Yeah. What do you like about it?
It's very quiet.
It's very quiet.
You didn't put your foot on the accelerator much. I was expecting a kind of Jeremy Clarkson moment. Because he had his Tesla wet dream, didn't he? Where he, first time ever where he went in a Tesla and he suddenly realised that this was a more powerful beast than any internal combustion engine he'd ever encountered.
That's right.
I still think he hasn't really got over that. He's gone a bit soft since then. You know?
Well, yeah. I mean, he probably had a bit of a kick up the backside with his wake-up call, didn't he?
He probably did.
Well, thank you ever so much. And
my
I'd be
pleasure.
very happy to give you a proper spin, foot down.
Don't worry.
You can even get behind the wheel if you'd like.
I am so not into cars. You can't believe I don't have a car, so it's. But it's nice. I have 2 bicycles there. You see.
Oh wow!
Yeah, I know. So from a footprint point of view.
Okay. You don't ride them both at the same time.
No. I have one where I live and one where I work.
It's not some closet circus act that you're involved in for the activism.
No, definitely not.
Well, thank you ever so much.
No,
it's been an absolute pleasure.
No, it's been great.
I very much look forward to your talk tomorrow.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to it myself.
Yeah, good. Thank you.
Good.